To QI, which tonight is a wholesale homage to all that is horrible. Queasily hunched over the handrail with me tonight are the disgusted Dara O'Brien. The appalled Chris Addison. The shuddering Sean Locke. And the slightly disturbed Alan Davies. The buzzers are a hideous foretaste of the loathsomeness to come. Chris goes... Ugh! Dara goes... That is disgusting! Sean goes... Thank you, Sean. And Alan goes...
Hello, I'm Piers Morgan.
Pass the sick bag, Alice. Let's plunge in. Where do you think this little chap lives?
Oh, I bet it's about your person, is it?
It's certainly... Let's just say it is parasitical.
It looks like it fits on the top of a pencil.
There's a good luck charm for your exams.
You know, like kids have stuff on the end of their pencils, yeah?
Yeah.
One of those?
Or has someone's head been removed? Is it a massive thing?
Ah! No, it's not that.
I reckon it looks like it lives around something that's long.
Yes.
Long and it's got lots of blood in it.
It's... yeah.
Maybe a couple of veins. It might have a couple of veins in it. Just to give it a bit of purchase, because it was just long and smooth, it would slide down it.
Where are you going?
Something that's got a certain texture to it. Sean, it's got a bit of give in it.
I'm going to rein you in, Sean.
I'm just...
Yeah. You're kind of right. It's a slidey organ, a wet organ that it's...
Looking at me for... I think, looking at it, I think it lives in the dark.
It's black all around it.
Yeah, that's it in its natural environment. Yes. No, it's got that translucent, I'm not worried about how I look thing.
Yes. Actually, it's a mouthpiece. It's a mouth part that it latches onto.
The tongue.
The tongue.
The tongue, yes. There's a tongue of a particular fish. It is indeed. It's called the tongue-eating louse.
Is it the tongue of the...
It is...
Develop fins.
Do fish have tongues? I have never heard of...
Yeah?
What? Really? What?
Yes.
Why?
They have... Why?
Well, how else are they going to whistle?
This is the African blacktail.
That's not its actual size, is it?
Yes, it's a big fish. It's the African blacktail. The really gruesome thing about this louse is that it latches onto the tongue. You can see how big it is. And it sucks the blood out of the tongue such that the tongue disappears and it replaces the tongue. The animal thinks its tongue is actually this louse. And it lives in there quite happily and breeds, and its children live in the gills, and it just colonises the head.
So when the fish sees that photo, it's going to be really embarrassing.
Yes, exactly.
No wonder everyone was looking at me oddly at that party.
So the fish goes without a tongue, the louse gets free food.
On the plus side, it just looks like it's on a massive space hopper.
Does it die, the fish?
No, it carries on with a false tongue.
Well, parasites like to keep their host alive, don't
Well, that's it. It's to their advantage, because the point is the food that passes into the mouth.
they? It's probably not that bad.
No.
It's worse things happen to a fish, like being caught, as it has been there.
Yes, it's true, by a human.
Yeah.
It probably finds the human more disgusting than the louse.
Yeah.
There's a flatworm that sort of inserts itself into crabs and then grows through all the parts of the crab till it pops out the top and then drives the crab around.
Yes.
Get out of the
for some seaweed!
You're absolutely right. Well, there are other animals that you might like to know about. What's covered in snot and eats whales?
No, some sort of nose parasite.
Well, it's a parasite that eats whales. And it's a
Whole?
kind of no. It feeds on the bones of whales. It is evolved.
Is there a creature I don't know about? A massive creature. Even eats whales.
Oh,
The snot monster. It's this gigantic green thing that I've never seen.
it would be big, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Eats them like peanuts.
I mean, everyone has a bit of a whale when it dies, and it
Yeah.
takes months for it to get, and it gradually gets, all of it gets consumed by the creatures of the deep.
And the bits that fall right down to the bottom are the bones. And there's this extraordinary little...
Snotty little bugger.
It's literally little... Yeah, it latches into the bones and it brings out little feather-like plumes and it feeds off the nutrients and it's covered in mucus, so it's called a snot flower or muciflora.
I've coughed something like that one. That looks like a bit like KFC.
Oh, tempura.
Yeah.
It does a bit.
Tempura, that's so middle class.
Oh, if you're from Japan.
Hey, no, that's what it looks like. Doesn't look like KFC, like tempura.
So other parasites worthy of mention. Tapeworms, how would you know if you had a tapeworm?
You'd eat more than usual.
No, oddly
Do you know a
enough.
fact? I know a fact about tapeworms. Yeah. That 8% of people in this country have got tapeworms, which makes them more popular than dogs.
There you are, the most popular pet.
I heard a very interesting programme on the radio the other day about a man who was told that one of the benefits of having a tapeworm is it gets rid of asthma and eczema. And eventually he caught a tapeworm and it's got rid of his sort of crippling asthma and an eczema condition. It completely got rid of it. Good. And he swears by it. He doesn't want to get rid of this tapeworm. You know, he eats more. And
Well, no, you don't eat more, actually. That's not true at all.
well,
In fact,
I
if
added that bit on.
Yeah,
You're right.
Quite.
Put that in.
Yeah.
Put that in on purpose.
It's a misapprehension. People think that, oh, it eats all your food, therefore you're bound to be really hungry.
Yeah.
In fact, it makes you nauseous. It eats a small amount of your food, but the irritation to the bowel and various other problems mean you actually lose appetite.
Somebody told me once that to get rid of the worm, you have to starve yourself and then wave a steak in front of your mouth. And, you know, I was 16, I was chatting up this girl at 16.
Not your mouth.
Yeah, she was all about it, and then it would come up and then bob out, and, you know. I was 16, she was saying this, I was trying to chat her up.
You're trying to chat her up with tapeworm stories.
It was her tapeworm story, right?
Oh, I see, right.
So what sort of length would you expect a tapeworm to be inside you?
8 metres.
14
miles.
More, but 14 miles is perhaps a little long. Yes,
Good half.
Thank you for joining in. No, but 50 feet is not. It's not.
That's 8 metres isn't
a lot
bad,
of
is it?
stuff. 8 metres isn't bad at all. No, but they can stay in you for 20 years. You can have
get
them
quite
for a
close to
long,
them,
long
wouldn't
time. They're not pleasant. We don't want them, and they are segmented, aren't they? They're not it's flat, but in little segments that make them even creepier.
There's one that comes out of your leg. And it takes 3 or 4 weeks to come out of your leg because the only way of getting it out is to wind it round a pencil. You have to go to the doctor every day and he'll do about an inch of it a day. Yeah. It's incredibly painful. But there's a theory that that's where the medical sign of the serpent wrapped round the staff comes from.
Oh, that's a nice thought. I don't know if it's true, but I like this kind of atmosphere of scout camp where everyone keeps each other awake. And apparently there's this thing, and this person, and these spiders came out. Hopefully that's prepared you all for the horrors ahead, so you might need a stiff drink after all those disgusting animals. What's the key ingredient, then, in the world's nastiest cocktail?
Malibu.
Creme.
I reckon you've got someone a really good quick type who just goes...
Why is the child catcher now working as a barista? Why is
I suppose it's to suggest nastiness. It is indeed Sir Robert Helpman. I think he's there to suggest nastiness. We're after a nasty cocktail.
Is it a genuine drink?
It's a genuine cocktail that is served in a genuine bar in a genuine place in a genuine country.
There's one place.
There's one place, and it's probably... It's a part of the body. We're in a country that is sort of known for its cleanliness, probably, more than anything else, and for its...
Switzerland.
Canada, which they say of Toronto, it's New York run by the Swiss, so it's that kind of a place. But this is in the Yukon, in a mining bar, the downtown hotel, Dawson City. It's a part of a human being.
An eye?
Toenails.
Well, toenails is good enough.
Bogey.
It's a toe.
A toe.
Toe. Yeah. The sour toe cocktail is the spécialité de la maison in the downtown hotel.
Where did they get the toe?
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole story there. Yeah. It started in the 1960s when a figure called Captain Dick Stevenson, he'd been all kinds of things, from a male stripper to a miner to a lumberjack, all the, the way that manly men are.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he found himself in an old cabin, and there was a pickled toe that had belonged to a rum runner back in the Prohibition days. And for some reason, he thought it would be amusing to offer as a challenge to put it in alcohol, and the idea was you drank it. And it became a very popular drink. You kept the toe, though. It moved from glass to glass. But the important thing was, there's a little rhyme, which is the key, is you can drink it fast, you can drink it slow, but the lips have got to touch the toe. So the toe has to touch. But unfortunately, there was a series of accidents. In 1980, Gary Younger, a local miner, accidentally swallowed the toe. So they found another one, this very nice lady called Mrs. Lawrence of Alberta, whose middle toe was amputated due to an inoperable corn, donated it. So you were then drinking a toe that not only was amputated, but had a hideous corn on it. And people... That lasted well. It didn't have to be alcohol.
I've drunk worse than that. I remember being at a party once, no glasses, drinking tea and Maria out of a dog bowl. Wow. So, no glasses.
Way.
That's chicken, it's fine.
So, yeah, they've gone through a lot of toes now. In fact, they have a collection. People know about this bar, so they donate their toes if they're going to be amputated. So they have some packed in rock salt in the back. You can choose your toe to have with it.
He looks like he finds it hilarious. I can imagine going,
You're gonna have to drink the toe. That's brilliant. You're gonna drink the toe. I love that.
It's only $5 a shot. They reckon 35,000 people have done it.
Yeah.
It's quite popular.
I mean, you're likely to pass on germs, though, aren't you? All those people touching the same toe seems very unsavoury.
Yes, you're right.
Is a toe supposed to retain any flavour? Is it has it been pickled in a way that makes the drink more interesting, or is it just for the...
It's just so you can say you've done it these days, isn't it? It's pretty... But it's leather now, I would imagine, isn't it?
Well,
leather and a hint of nail varnish. Anyway, there we are. Yeah, that's the Downtown Hotel in Dawson City in the Yukon, and it offers its patrons the sour toe cocktail, the liquor of your choice, garnished with a severed human toe. Could be worse, though. Give me one good reason to put a frog's bottom in your mouth. Do you remember posing for that?
I remember that. What a night that was. Let's see what I've got in my hands.
Oh!
is it breathing underwater? Because if you were swimming along, you grabbed a frog and sucked all the air out of it, keep going.
You've just got to swap round your elements, your Aristotelian elements. You said you're in water, sucking air out of a frog. Imagine you're in air,
Sucking water.
You're in the desert. You're in the Australian desert.
Right.
And there's a number of species of frog who, in order to kind of prepare themselves for the dry season ahead, store a huge amount of liquid in the form of actually urine, but very weak urine. As you can see, they swell up quite a lot. And as Aboriginals have discovered, if you find one of these and you're very, very dry, you literally put it like that and suck its bottom, and you get a lovely drink.
It's like it's a Capri Sun.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Squashier than a fruit.
And you just get a straw and you can make a hole wherever you want.
It's Cyclorana platycephalus, the little round frog with the flat head, essentially, also known as the water-holding frog.
Presumably, though, the photo of it I see is the one after all of the water he'd carefully stored inside, and he's there all loose and going, and then to go find more water again.
It is a bit mean, isn't it?
Yeah.
It buries itself under the ground in that condition in the summer and kind of sleeps, which is the opposite of hibernating. And there are points at stake. For those of you who can tell me what the summer version of hibernating is. Hibernating is from hiber.
Lobernating.
Oh, that's a good... It's logical again. Lobernate. Hibernating?
Etonation.
You're so close, yes.
It's...
Your audience knows, I expect.
It's squashing in a minute.
Eastivation, they're saying there. Yeah, very good, yeah. Eastivation. And if that's made you feel ill, answer me this. And what's the best way to get rid of a leech?
Stand near someone fatter. Just go... Go on. Off you go.
Look at that. Check that out.
Because you think they like going through fat, burrowing through fat to get to the blood.
Well, I figured there'd be something a bit more tasty than my wizened.
And your etiolated
Dry.
blood.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to rip them off, do you?
You do, why not?
But doesn't that do more damage and leave bits of them in you or something?
Oh.
It's going to turn out to be ripping them off.
Oh, yes.
All right, burn it off.
You want to burn it off, really?
Douse it in some sort of vodka whiskey spirit thing.
You're safe with that one. You could try.
right.
Well, actually, the answer is simply just leave it.
Ignore it.
Yeah.
It fills up and goes.
Yeah. If you pull it off, you won't leave a bit of it behind, but nor will it help.
It's kind of difficult to ignore when it's right there on
Yeah,
your
that-
nose.
I agree.
You're having to... Sorry,
They're usually going to be on the legs, though, because there are all kinds of misapprehensions about leeches. One is that they drop, they're sort of evolved to drop down onto your neck. Nearly always going to be on your legs, because they're going to be in the water. If you pull them off, they don't leave bits of themselves behind, but they're anticoagulant, means you will bleed for quite a long time. Whereas if you let them finish it off, they actually seal off the wound nicely, and you've only lost about a teaspoonful of blood.
Aren't they trying to experiment with the anticoagulant to
Yes.
find ways of stopping haemophilia and so on?
That's right. Wales was the capital of British leech farming. You'd be pleased to know. There's still one left.
They're called leeches.
Leeches. Very good, with two L's, that's it.
Does it hurt?
Not really, no. I've had a leech. I mean, you don't actually notice. Someone usually points it out. It hurts if you pull it off, so that's the point. Just
How
leave
did
it
you
and
get
it'll drop
yours
off. I was told just to leave it, exactly. They just said, you've
how
got a leech there, and I looked at it. and I
Still
went,
there
"Ugh."
now.
No, it's not still there.
5 years later, huge great leech. Giving it a name, read its story.
Nurturing it. How long
very
before it falls off? How long before it fills? How long
Oh,
before-
no, not very long. I mean, you know, it'll be there for 10 minutes or so.
And it doesn't
Oh,
leave you a
that's
sting
fine.
like a mosquito.
No.
But if you burn one, it will come off, won't it?
It will, but it's bad for it. It will make it vomit, which is a bad thing, because other blood it's got in it may go into you from someone else. It's just completely unnecessary. Just leave it be. It's nothing like as annoying as a tsetse fly, for example.
Or a human.
Or as painful. Or a human that bit you, for example.
Yeah.
People used to farm them. People used to stand around in sort of pools of water
Exactly.
and get them all over their legs, and then presumably they used to take them off. So they must.
Well, they'd wait for them, yeah, that's right.
were
They'd
they
just
waiting
sort of
for
peel
them
them
then,
off
did they?
when they finish. Pop them into buckets, sell them. The
they
National
sell them?
Health Service, well, to doctors. I mean, another name for a physician was a leech. It's what you called a doctor, because one of the most popular cures, so-called, for anything was a bloodletting. And leeches were actually the least harmful. Those are the worst kind, what a doctor would call the phlebotomy, a cutting of the vein. And they're huge bowls of blood. I mean, really, were constantly. I mean, It was terribly bad for people. But that was considered to be the basic cure for almost any fever. Whereas a leech, mind you, they'd use about 50 of them, but they'd cover you in leeches. But they're used today in surgery. The NHS buys thousands of leeches a year. There's some.
What surgery do they use it in?
Well, in microsurgery, it kind of repairs the blood vessels quite well, seals them up properly. It's really very helpful, it seems.
I hope the leech guy in the surgery dresses differently to the rest of the operation staff. The leech guy arrives in like the child catcher, like, in a fancy hat with leeches hanging off it. And then he arrives in, hello, the leech man.
So, leeches won't do you much harm if you just let them finish their meal. Now, what was a really horrible way of transporting smallpox vaccine?
Was it by Marty Feldman?
God bless him, I remember that scene so well, don't you?
You mean now, when are they transporting smallpox?
No, now you would
Within an
transport
animal.
smallpox.
You infect an animal and then you transport the animal
Sheep.
and then you take
You've got the right principle. It's actually not an animal, though.
People?
a rock. You infect a rock.
No, a human.
A volunteer
A
prisoner.
human child, an orphan.
An orphan.
Yeah.
He's got no one to tell.
Yeah. You go back to the early 19th century, vaccination has been discovered. We know about vaccination.
Cowpox.
Cowpox, exactly. Edward Jenner discovered that if you injected people with cowpox, they would be immune to smallpox. A smallpox which killed about 60 million people in the 18th century. It was a really terrible disease. Now, in about 1803, the King of Spain, whose son had died of smallpox, thought, we want to vaccinate everybody in South America. But how do you get the vaccine in a ship for months? You haven't got ice packs. You know, it's 1803. So you round up a few orphans and you inject one orphan with the vaccine, and he develops the immunity, and his blood is full of the antibodies, and it's all great. So you take his blood and you put it in the next one, and the next one, until you've got a whole colony of orphans who are not harmed because they are immune to smallpox, but it means you can use them as a kind of serum, if you like. It's kind of creepy.
They're not harmed, but they're quite a long way away from home.
Yeah, that's the one trouble, is they find themselves in the middle of the jungle. The British, I'm afraid, we did it too. We did it with low-caste Indian boys. It's a pretty squalid thing to do, but it did work. It saved hundreds of thousands of lives, but, as you say, at the expense of some rather bewildered Spanish orphans.
Yeah, but presumably they weren't brought there and then summarily killed.
No, not killed, but they were just left there, presumably. I mean, they were orphans anyway, so you may say maybe they wouldn't have had that good a future in Spain in 1803. Yeah. So maybe their lives went well for them in South America. Who knows?
Too late now, anyway. Nothing we can do about it.
No, there isn't. You're right. Yeah, but we can we can think about them. We can give this little pause and
don't worry about
honour them.
Forget about it. Let's move on.
So, what about smallpox today? Is it a worry?
Yes.
How so?
Because it's really the orphans.
That you care so
the
much
orphans
about.
of great dynasties who are coming back to attack us.
No. It came that close to being the very first disease that humankind completely got rid of, in the sense that there was not one vial or test tube left of it in the world. And then they thought again in about 2002 and said, well, maybe we don't really have the right actually to extinguish it from the face of evolution. So there is somewhere a tiny amount of it left.
Is there not a fear? Is there, I would have thought that they might keep it to develop a vaccine in the event that, I don't know, North Korea had kept hold of some smallpox.
Well, that's also possibly it. You're absolutely right. It may just be that they can't risk the possibility that somebody else has it, and that's human nature. But it's...
I'm sorry, this feels like we're in the opening scene of an apocalypse movie or something.
Yeah. Doesn't life often feel like
chatting
that?
About...
But don't worry, it's in this test tube. Nothing can...
And of course, it was so virulent in the 18th century, and people knew that it was contagious, that actually you were much more likely to get a job if you were pockmarked.
Because you'd actually had the
Because
disease.
it showed that you'd had it. So servants and things who were unblemished were unlikely to get a job because it's possible they would catch it and pass it on in the family. Anyway, smallpox vaccine was transported to the New World by successively infecting a series of small boys and then dumping them in South America when they weren't needed anymore. Now to some other handy hints for travellers. Fill in the blanks from these 19th century travel guides, all right? Firstly, never rub your eyes except with your...
Frog.
Frog.
Other eye?
Other eye. It's a handbook for travellers in Spain by Richard Ford in 1847.
Paella.
Elbows.
Elbows is the right answer. That's brilliant.
You can't.
Oh, thank you.
Elbow. Yeah.
I suppose because you're not supposed to use your hands in case of something.
That's it. But it's quite hard to get your... You have to be quite limber. Well, reasonably. Yeah, elbows. That was a piece of travelling. OK, the next one. Keep a spare jewel for emergencies in your...
Dog.
Dog would work. This is from a book called The Art of Travel or Shifts and Contrivances Available in Wild Countries by Sir Francis Galton.
This would be like, so you had some spare cash?
Yeah. It's, or a jewel, in fact, literally, to keep a spare jewel. Imagine you've been robbed. A highwayman or, well, no, it's in the 19th century, some sort of footpad.
In your shoe?
A shoe, they're probably looking a shoe and a hat.
Like a hat there in your cheek?
In your cheek, no.
Your fundament?
In your ear?
Stomach?
Up your nose?
Not in your stomach. The weird thing is it isn't an orifice.
Double chin.
Armpit.
Oh,
No.
Under your eyelid?
No.
Your hair!
No.
Between your toes?
No. In your arm. Literally.
In your arm.
He recommends you make a cut prior to travelling. You push a jewel in and you sew it up and let it heal. And then when you are...
And a little bit of hash?
Maybe. Yeah. Beware the dirty habits of native cooks who will often be seen buttering toast with...
Earwax.
It's got to be something that isn't butter.
Yeah. The wings of birds, the wings of fowls, apparently. This is something you're warned against.
Using them to do the buttering?
Yeah. I think it's quite reasonable.
Do you mean actually, what, for the secreting a substance, or...
Greasy
just
wing?
a
The
butter?
greasy wing, I guess they would roast a fowl and
see.
greasy, or they'd use a live chicken and use it to butter bread with.
A live chicken? In the kitchen, they have a chicken whose only job...
I don't think...
Butter in the toast.
I don't think it...
Chicken also...
It's just...
He also
Come
did
with
the
me if you
washing
want
up.
to
That's
live.
how he got the greasy
Yeah.
button from doing the washing up. When it's finished the washing up, it does the toast.
It's a...
Would he only have one arm? Would he have one particularly good arm for it? Or would he...
Yeah, that's what they do. It's a job. It's a job.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose it's a gig, you know. Is it...
And then if you want an egg on it...
Anyway, that's advice against eating butter when in the tropics from a book called Hardships in Travel
What
Made
a
Easy.
brilliant book that must be.
Yeah. Another thing to warn you against is the Germans are the worst offenders, having a grossness in their way of eating and a gloating zeal in...
A gloating zeal enclosure. This is my gloating zeal. I have the biggest rock.
It could be that. Oddly, it isn't. No, it's actually dirty postcards. They were warned against travelling with Germans because they have a gloating zeal in collecting salacious postcards, is the exact...
I love this. These are the warnings that were given pre-2 World Wars.
Yes.
Yeah. Previously known for collecting salacious postcards.
It turns out they...
Later for exterminating millions.
Good. I think we should move on. How can you tell if you've got Bonnie and Clyde syndrome?
Is it those people who've got, like, one half they're dressed as a man and the other half they're dressed as a woman? And they sort of go do variety shows in probably somewhere like Albania these days. It's probably the only place to have them.
It's not...
That woman on the left got it.
No, I don't think so. Peculiarly enough, Bonnie might have had it, but Clyde certainly didn't. It's a paraphilia. Do you know what a paraphilia is?
It's an erotic attachment to something wrong. Or
Yeah, it's like
outside-
a fetish or a taboo or something like that. It can be for a physical... not necessarily bank robbery. It's one of the few paraphilias that more women have than men, this particular one. It's called hybristophilia. Women who fall for very dangerous, violent criminals.
Right.
In Britain alone, there are estimated to be at least 100 women who are engaged to Americans on death row.
People who've corresponded
Just
with
that's
death
British women who've not even been there, who are engaged to, Not just corresponding, but engaged to.
Not to mention the wives of Tory MPs.
Yeah, well, right. It's an erotic, sort of fetishistic, strange love that people have for violent criminals. I mean, real wrong-uns, not just like, oh, he's a naughty boy, but, I mean, murderers of the worst possible kind.
She appears to be going, lose weight!
That's the real Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah, the casting was quite favourable to them.
It was, wasn't it?
I've never seen a picture of them.
He just used to wear a hat.
There are no
rim.
Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty in real life, has to be said.
No, the real Clyde Barrett was an absolute institutional criminal. I mean, a really violent, unpleasant man who murdered a lot and killed many people. But Bonnie might have had this. A lot of the gang members said she never raised a gun or killed anybody, and that she was fond of poetry, she was privately educated, she was intelligent, and maybe she actually had hybristophilia for Clyde.
So why do we think men don't get... Why would men not find that as appealing?
I don't know, maybe it's something to do with that, with the risk of being sort of clichéic about these things, that some of women's belief that they can improve people in a way that men don't seem to have that desire to believe that could be good
violent criminals are quite good at sex.
Are they?
I don't know, I'm just guessing here.
You've got to say they are, or there's a bloody brain...
I imagine they're quite horny. Maybe they're just...
On a moped.
There are various theories given. A glamour for notoriety, vicariously gratified propensity for violence themselves, religious fervour, sometimes evangelical Christians who think that they can convert there's a very sad case of two Christian sisters from Australia called Avril and Rose who left marriages they were already in, so-called boring marriages, for two criminals in Australia. Avril was battered to death with a hammer by her husband as soon as he was let out of prison, having married him when he was in jail. And the other one, Rose, her husband was put back in prison after he tried to cut her ear off and pull her teeth out with pliers. So these are not nice people they're falling for.
They're bad choices.
They're bad choices.
Yeah, they are bad choices.
There's another paraphilia called hapaxophilia. That's someone who gets off on being robbed. That exists.
Did you see the documentary with the guy who fell over the car? There's a guy who's...
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You would have sexual relations with
genuinely
cars.
would, yeah.
And they brought two of them together, two of these guys, in a kind of weird kind of... Well, being together, they'll have something to talk about, the two of them. But one of them shagged the other guy's car. I'm really angry about this.
Well, there you are. That's the Bonnie and Clyde syndrome. Hybristophilia. And it's an attraction to people who've committed terrible crimes or atrocities. Name a pizza topping that eats insects.
I get to be Mario in this situation.
Anchovies.
Is it? Oh, dear me, no, not anchovies.
Olive.
Sorry?
Olive.
Not olive.
Spiders.
No, is that a pizza topping?
Well, yeah.
Pineapple.
Yeah, you can put anything on a pizza.
Pineapple? No.
It's no more ridiculous than pineapple on a pizza.
Yeah.
Spiders.
Cheese.
Someone said to me, do you want spiders on that? I go, yeah, all right.
Would
If you can have a chicken tikka pizza, I think spiders is a very small leap further.
Do you?
Peppers.
Not
I've
peppers.
forgotten what the question is now. What?
Tomatoes.
Pizza top. Tomatoes is the right answer.
50 point.
Yeah, maybe. Some point.
Some point for a
Yeah,
little
they
bit.
eat insects.
Do they?
Tomatoes eat insects. It's not their only diet. As we know, tomatoes grow like a lot of fruits and vegetables. They draw their nutrients out of the soil and can be grown hydroponically. But also, they have another way of ingesting nutrients, and that is trapping insects in the furry, the hairy stems. They die and they absorb their nutrients. So they are insectivorous.
Not while they're on a pizza, though.
Not while they're on a pizza.
That'd be bad news for the spider, wouldn't it? If you're watching your spider pizza and then they get eaten by the tomato.
Fortunately.
Well, that's how you get the flavour. That's how you get that lovely spidery tomato flavour.
They trap them, and so they fall down into the ground and then are absorbed up through the soil. But it's a way of collecting richer soil by filling it with dead insects. You see? OK, very good. Tomatoes trap insects in a deadly embrace on their hairy stems and use their decaying bodies as fertiliser. But what is it that this flower behind me eats that Louis XIV ordered to be removed from the corridors of Versailles once a week?
Peasants.
Not peasants. You want to get a sense of the scale of the flower. That central bowl shape is about the size of a palm of a human hand.
Like a mouse.
Well, a mouse-like animal, that plant is a really extraordinary plant. It's a lavatory plant. It's a toilet seat. It looks like a toilet seat, toilet with a seat, a bowl, and that's what it is. It is an amazing achievement of evolution. It attracts a little shrew by giving out a sweet, buttery smell, and the shrew sits on it like that, and it has to face that way because that's where the smell is, and it can lick its nectar from there. And this shrew poos when it eats. It's its habit. So the poo goes into the plant and gives the plant about 70 to 100% of its nitrogen. So it's a fabulous system.
That shrew's going, do you have to take a photo now while I'm on the job?
But isn't that a pleasing way for a plant to develop?
So hang on, the thing that Louis had removed was poo, basically.
Yes, poo.
Yeah.
Once a
That's why he
week.
got the name Louis.
Once a week from Versailles in the corridors because he was a hygienic fellow.
Once a week.
Into these plants.
No, no, you won't. No, never mind.
So that's just a coincidence.
Yes, it's a link.
What you've done is you've joined two ideas, two things together.
A way of talking about a plant that's a lavatory and a way of saying that Versailles, which is one of the most elegant palaces in the world, in its day was full of people who never bathed and whose idea of hygiene was clearing poo from corridors once a week.
So it's human poo.
They're human
Yes,
poo.
human poo.
They just have a crap in the corner.
Basically.
Right. Just chatting away to a lady. Oh, mademoiselle de la Beauvoir de Vert. I manger... excuse me a minute. No, that was German. Qu'est-ce que vous allez à Versailles maintenant, plus tard?
Funny, 'cause
They're not fanning themselves.
Hey, when we broadcast this bit, can we get proper subtitles for what Sean...
It will be hard.
Yeah, I speak French. Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good.
You so do. Well, yeah, I'm not quite sure necessarily in front of ladies like that, but the point is it's a very robust non-bathy sort of place in which the poo piled up in corners.
They got gardens. It's famous for the gardens, Versailles.
Yes.
There's bloody gardens everywhere.
Can't poo in the garden. Someone spent ages making
The point is that toilet bowl-shaped Nepenthes iowiwi lives primarily on shrew faeces. The French in Louis XIV's time weren't keen on washing, but drew the line at leaving piles of excrement around the house for more than a week or so. One horrible thing all of our panel, I suspect, has experienced is heckling. So where did the first hecklers come from? What did they do for a living?
In the House of Parliament?
No, it wasn't the House of Parliament. The heckle is actually a word meaning a comb for dividing two types of fabric, of flax, for making yarn. And people who did that were called hecklers. And there was a particular place. Where was the capital of the jute industry in the 19th century?
Scotland, Dundee.
In Dundee, that's absolutely right. And the Dundonian heckler was known to be a troublemaker, a rabble-rouser. Violent harangue and ferocious debates they were known for. And so to publicly question, to shout, to harangue, was like being a heckler. It was a back formation. You were a heckler, and so what you did was to heckle. And that's where the word comes from. I thought you'd like to know that.
That's interesting, yeah.
Have you been heckled much?
No.
You've had an easy life.
I didn't used to get heckled. If people didn't like me, they just start talking amongst themselves. I remember seeing two girls in the front row of the comedy store. One turned to the other and went, "He's lost it."
That's very disturbing.
Really gets under your skin, then.
I kind of had to go to them to get them to talk. I was in Liverpool on this trip, and I was talking about dreams, and about occasionally having a dream about a famous person, and some bloke in the crowd shouted about that he had a dream about Kate Winslet, and I said, "Oh," and I said, "Was it a sexy dream?" And he goes, "No, she turned me down." In his own head.
I dream about Kate Winslet.
I said, because I said to him, I said, "Were you disappointed?" And he goes, "Nah, I didn't hit her with my best stuff."
That's very strange.
I had a dream about Kate Winslet, and in my dream of Kate Winslet, it didn't quite work out either.
Wow, she's like a Freddy Krueger of teases.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, hecklers were originally people who split the fibres of flax and hemp to spin into yarn. And so, with a cough and a retch, we bring up the bolus that is general ignorance. So, fingers on buzzers. Where does a snake's tail begin?
After its bottom.
Is the right answer. After its bottom. Absolutely right. Yep. That's simple.
And as you know, Stephen, I studied snakes for many, many, many years. I'm one of the world's leading snake-catologists.
Harpatologist?
Snake-catologist.
Ophidian expert.
We don't call ourselves that.
Don't you?
This is the rebranding.
Yeah.
It's called a cloaca. And after that is where the snake... Because the rest of it is all these
Called the
ribs.
body. We call it the body.
Ribs. Ribs and spine. It's got vertebrae. It's got a lot of vertebrae. And, yeah.
That other bit's the head. The other end there. Do you want to write that down, Steve? The head.
You weren't kidding, were you? You really are an expert. And thank you. And you get your points.
No legs on a snake, Steve.
No.
You can't find any legs on a snake.
Not a one. Not a one. Snakes might look like they're all back end, but they actually have surprisingly short tails. What are the dimensions of a piece of 2x4? Yes. Oh, thanks.
4x2.
No! What a pity.
2x4. 2x4.
No! All the points you've made on your expertise on snakes.
Yeah.
Has just you've leached them.
Arwin and back.
No, it is called what is 2x4?
It's plank of wood.
But it's not 2x4. It's about 1.5 by 3.5 inches. It's based on what's called a dimension block, which was originally itself 2x4, but it's then shaved and planed, so it's a lot smaller. But even now, the original dimension block is smaller or larger. It doesn't actually matter. It's just a block of wood, and it's still called a 2x4, even though it no longer is. Now, we saved the most disgusting, the most horrible thing of all for last. What am I describing? Allegedly, it can cause birds to fall dead from the sky, and it's banned by airlines, but it's quite good on toast. We all... Oh, no. No wonder you've not been getting points, Chris.
Oh, that's typical.
Yes, yeah, that's unfair. Chris, you can answer.
What was the question? Is it gentleman's relish?
No. I have some here. I have a can of it. But, and this is a genuine can of it.
It's a caviar.
No.
Oh, this is something rotten, isn't it?
Yeah.
Scandinavian rotten food.
It's Scandinavian rotten fish. It's
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
they have it on Midsummer's Night, don't they? I've always wanted to try that.
Sir Strömming, I've actually been told, and you may say, oh, go on, Stephen, that I cannot open this, that if I did, the audience, probably the audience at home would go away. It is apparently so disgusting that it would never leave the studio. And I think would be sued by the studio for opening
Graham Norton show.
It is, yeah, by the Graham Norton show. It's called Sir Strömming. It's herring. What happens is you put the herring in a barrel, first of all, in a wooden barrel, with about half the amount of salt you need to cure it. So it's not cured. Instead of being cured, it ferments. In other words, it putrefies. And then after it's been like that for a month or so, you then put it in a can, but the can is designed, as you can tell, to swell up slightly, so it's continuing to ferment. It's still...
They buckle, don't they?
They buckle, and it is absolutely, unbelievably disgusting, the smell. There is nothing, apparently, as revolting, really, on the face of the...
A friend of mine lives in Sweden. He said that, you know, that is something you have to be Swedish to eat.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, they consider it a delicacy. Often what they do is they open the can underwater, because the way to eat it anyway is to rinse it and then cover it in sort of onions, which helps with the smell a bit, and then drink it down.
It's got a best before date.
It is a bit late. I'm going to move this away
Best
because...
before we canned it.
Yeah. Apparently, in the 16th century, there were... you can have a look at the can, but please don't open it. There were Swedish sailors... No. Who ran out of salt, and they had this rotting fish, and they found some Finnish islanders that they sold it to, thinking that, you know, they're idiot foresters and who know no better. And then a year later, they came back, and they met these same people, and they said, can we have some more of this rotten fish, please? So they thought, oh, maybe it's good. So they tried it themselves, and apparently it is tasty, even though it smells...
It's a can.
...beyond anything. Yeah, I'm glad to say the can is holding up. So, there you are. Sir Strömming Baltic herring, fermented in cans with foul-smelling and explosive, but allegedly delicious results. And so, we head now staggering towards the bucket, and there only remains the horrible embarrassment of the scores. And, well, I have to say, totally repulsive as they all are, it's pretty impressive. In first place, repulsing all comers, with a positive 2 points, Dara O'Brien! In second place, with a reasonably bad taste in the mouth, with 13.8 points, it's Chris Addison! Gagging slightly from time to time, Sean Locke with minus 33! And just behind him, taking an early bath, on minus 35, Alan Davis. That's all from this stomach-churning edition of QI. So it's good night from Chris, Sean, Dara, Alan and me. And one final word of advice. If you can't be a good example, try to be a horrible warning. Good night. Thank you.
Film 2010 is here on BBC HD in just a few moments. Stay with us for a sneak preview of the new Harry Potter film.